flee for their lives. Concealed in the darkness using a high-level camouflage technique, Uchiha Shursui observed the enemy's retreat, confirming that they were not merely employing tactics but were genuinely leaving, and he finally breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, if it came down to a 1 versus 7, he truly had no confidence in completely defeating those 7. If pushed into a corner, could very well be himself who suffered. Thus, he had no choice but to let them go for the time being. Uchiha Shursui sensed the positions of Hinata Koji and the others and turned to follow them. Hinata Koji laid the bloodied and gravely injured Sarutobi Shirogino against the trunk of a large tree. Yuzuki Yazen hurried over, using chakra to perform medical ninjutsu to aid him. However, no matter what she did, the massive wound on Sarutobi Shigeno's body continued to bleed profusely. Blood flowed down in torrents, and the gory wound was a sight that struck terror into the hearts of onlookers. Yuzuki Yazen's hands began to tremble slightly. "Wake up, Shirogino!" She attempted to rouse her teammate, but no matter how she called out, Sarutobi Shirogino did not awaken or improve. Rather, his body grew increasingly cold.
Hinata-koi,
watching his teammate gradually lose vitality, understood that he could not be saved. His eyes involuntarily dimmed. Just then, a figure landed beside them. It was Uchiha Shursui.
I'm sorry.
"I'm late." Uchiha Shursui calmly gazed at the now cold Sarutobi Shirogino and addressed the other two. "Was it really you who intervened earlier to save us?" Hinata Koji asked in surprise. "Yes. But how did you manage that? My Byakugan didn't detect your presence at all. Perhaps the power of your eyes has yet to be fully developed." Uchiha Shursui did not elaborate further. He shifted the topic, saying, "We must leave here quickly. If those guys catch up, I may not be able to continue protecting you." "But Shirogino." Yuzuki Yazen looked conflicted as she gazed at the pale, lifeless Sarutobi Shirogino. "The recovery unit will come to handle his remains," Uchiha Shursui reminded. Hinata Koji added sorrowfully, "We are still in a state of war. We must ensure our own survival first to have a chance to avenge Shirogino." Yuzuki Yazen burst into tears, exhausting herself in a desperate attempt to use her chakra to revive Sarutobi Shirogino. But it was clear that she had failed. After struggling for a while, Yuzuki Yazen finally had to accept the cruel reality. She stood up, wiped away her tears, and then looked up at Uchiha Shursui with determination in her eyes. "Our strength pales in comparison to that of the enemy. If we wish to seek revenge, follow me." Uchiha Shursui spoke before the other could respond. As dawn approached, Uchiha Dali, acting as the temporary captain, encountered the Konoha forces alongside Hinata Koji and Yuzuki-san, who had come to provide support. To their surprise, the leader of the group was none other than Uchiha Fugaku, the current head of the Uchiha clan. After listening to Uchiha Dali and the others explain the enemy they faced the previous night and the ensuing battle, Uchiha Fugaku regarded Uchiha Dali with newfound respect for his strength. "Since we've met, you should rejoin the team, Dali. As for you two, you may choose to either continue with us to the front lines or return to regroup with the other units, who are less than 2 kilometers behind us." Uchiha Fugaku advised Hinata Koji, and Yuzuki Senator. The two exchanged glances and ultimately decided to return and join the other teams. Before departing, they both approached Uchiha Dali. "Although it may seem unnecessary, I must thank you for saving us," Hinata Koji said. "I feel the same. Thank you for saving me," Dali Yuzuki-san added, her clear eyes reflecting a unique light as she earnestly looked into Uchiha Dali's eyes. "Live well," Uchiha Dali told the two. After parting ways, Uchiha Dali was assigned to team up with 3 other Uchiha clan members, splitting from the main force to provide support in other areas of the battlefield. They were Uchiha Tetsuhan, Uchiha Inahono, and Uchiha Hakadai, all in their early 20s, yet already possessing the strength of Jonin and having awakened their double Tomo Sharingan. Seeing that Uchiha Fugaku had chosen to pair them with Uchiha Dali, a previously unremarkable individual, the 3 felt a hint of disdain. "So, you single-handedly repelled the 7 ninja swordsmen?" Uchiha Hakadai questioned with skepticism. "How many Tomo do you have in your eyes now?" Uchiha Inahono could not help but inquire. Picking up on their unfriendly tone, Uchiha Dali replied nonchalantly, "I haven't activated my eyes yet. I merely got lucky in driving those guys off. I hope to rely on your guidance moving forward." Upon hearing his words, the 3 displayed expressions of contempt. However, since they were all from the Uchiha clan and on the battlefield, they ultimately said, "We will be going directly to the front lines to confront the enemy. You better keep up with us. If we encounter strong opponents, don't try to be a hero. Let us handle them. I will be the captain of this team, and you should know me already, so I won't elaborate further. Let us move out." The speaker was Uchiha Tetsuhan. Uchiha Dali had nothing more to say in response. He sped along with the 3, and as daylight broke, they finally reached the eastern border of the Land of Fire. Just a few kilometers beyond the forest lay the sea. Our mission this time is to ambush the enemy at their landing dock, destroy their vessels, and cut off the supply lines of the Mist Village forces. Uchiha Tetsuhan reiterated their task. The three nodded in unison. Kid, remember to stick close to us and don't try to show off. Uchiha Inahono lightly patted Uchiha Dali on the shoulder, offering a reminder. No sooner had he spoken than Uchiha Hakadai suddenly dropped from the trees, signaling them to be cautious. A squad from the Mist Village has just landed and is heading this way. At this, the others immediately fell into a state of alert. The four leaped into the trees to conceal themselves. Uchiha Dali extended his sensory abilities, quickly detecting the precise location and number of enemies. The Mist Village's assault team was also composed of 4 members, 1 captain and 3 subordinates. At that moment, they were indeed advancing rapidly through the forest from the seaside, heading straight toward them. Listening closely, Uchiha Dali calculated that they were over a kilometer away. He silently reached into his ninja tool pouch and pulled out 4 shuriken. Shall we set a trap and take them out? Uchiha Hakadai suggested. There's no time. Uchiha Inahono shook his head. Uchiha Tetsuhan added, one of them should be a jonin, while the strength of the other 3 is unknown. We must be careful when we engage. Just as he spoke, they saw the enemy entering the woods. At that moment, 4 shuriken flew out simultaneously. 3 of them struck their targets with lightning speed, taking down the 3 enemies. The last shuriken was deflected by the leading mist ninja just in time. Uchiha Tetsuhan and the others, taken aback by the sudden turn of events, looked at Uchiha Dali in disbelief. Took them a few seconds to regain their composure. He really is a jonin. They momentarily suppressed their astonishment over Uchiha Dali's display of strength and turned their attention to the remaining enemy. At this point, the Mist Jonin had also noticed their position, vigilantly raising his blade in defense, and questioned, what impressive shuriken. I assume you're not just some nameless individual. Who was it that launched the sneak attack? Sneak attack? Heh. Uchiha Dali emerged boldly, meeting the enemy's gaze. The one who just attacked you openly was me, Uchiha Dali. He pointed a thumb at himself. Uchiha Dali? The enemy's pupils slightly contracted, instinctively glancing at the 3 Uchiha clan members who appeared alongside him. Assessing the strength of the opposing team, a bead of cold sweat appeared on the Mist Jonin's cheek. However, he did not seem overly concerned about Uchiha Dali's words. How formidable could a mere chunin be? Assuming that one of the 3 jonin was responsible for the earlier attack, he said, the Uchiha clan, we of the Mist Village will remember this. We shall meet again. The Mist Jonin was no fool. Realizing he could not take on Uchiha Dali and his 3 companions alone, he threw a smoke bomb and, with a loud bang, turned and fled amidst the rising smoke. What a cunning fellow! Uchiha Tetsuhan quickly sprang into action to block his escape, leaping after him. But from within the thick smoke, 3 shuriken flew out. Fortunately, he had anticipated this and dodged just in time. Otherwise, he would have been killed on the spot. As the enemy seemed poised to escape, a muffled grunt suddenly emerged from the smoke ahead. Moments later, the 3 saw Uchiha Dali throw 2 more shuriken forward. The first one to intercept the enemy was not Uchiha Tetsuhan, nor Uchiha Inahono or Uchiha Hakadai. These 3 Uchiha Jonin were unable to react in time. Amidst the swirling smoke, the enemy struck by the shuriken let out a pained scream before hastily retreating. Uchiha Tetsuhan and his companions exchanged incredulous glances at Uchiha Dali. Their expressions seemed to ask, what kind of shuriken throwing technique is this that is so extraordinary? Only Uchiha Dali knew that his shuriken never missed. After successfully injuring the opponent with 2 more shuriken, Uchiha Dali charged into the smoke ahead. Wait! Seeing his reckless action, Uchiha Tetsuhan quickly attempted to stop him, but it was too late. As Uchiha Dali vanished into the smoke, the 3 had no choice but to grit their teeth and follow. Through the haze, Uchiha Tetsuhan and his 2 companions swiftly beheld Uchiha Dairy forming hand seals with remarkable speed, unleashing a colossal fireball directed at the retreating enemy's back. Great fireball technique. The pupils of the 3 narrowed slightly. No sooner had the words left their mouths than they witnessed the great fireball released by Uchiha Dairy engulf the foe. Amidst the roaring flames, the enemy emitted a series of agonizing screams. Yet, the cries did not linger for long. Soon silence fell, as Uchiha Dairy had decisively dealt with the opponent. By the time Uchiha Tetsuhan and his companions arrived at his side, he casually brushed off his hands and turned around, saying, all right, the enemy is taken care of, we can proceed with our original mission. Who did you learn your kunai throwing skills from? Uchiha Inaho could not help but inquire. I developed them myself. Isn't this the standard level for a ninja? What, can't you manage it? Uchiha Dairy retorted. At that moment, Uchiha Inaho was momentarily at a loss for words, opening his mouth as if to say something, only to be halted by Uchiha Tetsuhan. Enough of that. Let us focus on the mission. He cast a deep glance at Uchiha Dari, his inner perception of this clan member's strength shifting gradually, leading to a change in attitude. After signaling the other two companions to prepare to continue toward the docks, Uchiha Tetsuhan then addressed Uchiha Dari once more. Next time you encounter an enemy, don't be so reckless. Your hasty pursuit through the smoke was dangerous. The enemy could have set an ambush. Understood, Senior. Uchiha Dari nodded earnestly. Yet, only he knew the truth of the situation. With his formidable sensory perception, he had long confirmed that there was no danger behind the smoke, and the enemy was easily within reach. Otherwise, how could Uchiha Dari have possibly charged in directly? Moments later, the four of them arrived at the seashore, concealed behind a pile of rocks, quietly observing the docks approximately 100 meters away. It was evident that a fierce battle had recently transpired here. Both the trees along the shore and the sandy beach bore the scars of combat, the surroundings left in utter disarray. However, it was clear that control of this area had now been reclaimed by the forces of the hidden mist village. Thus, their ships could brazenly continue to land here, transporting troops for battle. Shortly after the four reached this location, they spotted a ship approaching from the distant sea. Following closely were a second, third, and fourth vessel, 6 ships in total, ferrying dozens of mist ninjas. These must be reinforcements from the hidden mist village. We must inform the rear, Uchiha Inaho whispered. At this moment, Uchiha Tetsuhan glanced skyward and shook his head. Our people are already aware. We don't need to concern ourselves with these fellows. Our duty is to sabotage their ships. Upon hearing this, Uchiha Dari instinctively looked up at the sky. His sharp gaze instantly discerned a small black dot soaring approximately 200 meters above. His eyes focused automatically, magnifying the dot countless times. While ordinary eyes could only perceive a vague silhouette, in Uchiha Dari's view, it transformed into a clear image of a crow. Uchiha Shursui? Upon seeing the crow, Uchiha Dari immediately thought of that man. A ninja famed in the shinobi world for using crows as his summoning beasts and his body flicker technique. Uchiha Shursui's presence indicated that he was already aware of the situation here, meaning those dozens of mist ninjas did not require their intervention. The four fell silent, remaining motionless as they lay in wait. Soon, all 6 ships docked, and after securing their vessels, dozens of mist ninjas swiftly vanished into the woods. Once they departed, Uchiha Hakadai quietly suggested, "Let us go set explosive tags on their ships. Let us go." Uchiha Inaho immediately prepared to rise. However, at that moment, he felt a sudden weight on his shoulder, forcing him back down. Startled, Uchiha Inaho turned to look at Uchiha Dari, while the other two shared his confusion. Uchiha Dari shook his head and whispered, "Don't rush." Uncertain of his intentions, Uchiha Tetsuhan frowned and said, "Opportunities are fleeting. If we delay the mission and allow these ships to return, they can transport even more reinforcements our way." Uchiha Hakadai, equally dissatisfied, chimed in, "Dari, what are you doing?" Just as they finished speaking, all 4 of them perked up, their ears picking up a suspicious voice from outside the pile of rocks. "Is anyone there? It seems the Leaf Ninja's Haven Tea arrived here. We can safely retreat. Wait, let us leave them a little surprise. These ships are all old and should be disposed of anyway. Let us set explosive tags on them. Perhaps we can take out a few Leaf Ninjas." The conversation from the enemy ninjas of the hidden mist village sent a chill through Uchiha Tetsuhan, Uchiha Inaho, and Uchiha Hakadai, all of them realizing why Uchiha Dari had stopped Uchiha Inaho from taking action earlier. Once again, they were left in awe of Uchiha Dari's displayed strength. Yet, before they could express their admiration, Uchiha Dari had already leapt from their hiding spot, confronting the enemy. "Hey! You fool!" Upon witnessing Uchiha Dari disregard his previous warning and recklessly engage the enemy, Uchiha Tetsuhan felt a surge of frustration and hurriedly followed suit. The mist ninjas left behind to ambush the Leaf's infiltration squad were a standard 4-person combat team, consisting of 1 Jonin leading 3 Chunin or Genin. They had just breathed a sigh of relief, believing there were no Leaf ninjas here to launch a surprise attack, when suddenly, a figure leapt out, startling them. "This guy, is there really an ambush? Leaf ninjas? Looks like they are from the Uchiha clan." The 4 mist ninjas instantly fell into a combat stance, warily eyeing the revealed Uchiha Dari. Uchiha Dari opened his mouth. Forget it." He shook his head, wearing an expression of disinterest. Then, forming hand seals, he unleashed fireballs towards the 4 enemies before him. Fire style, great fireball technique. As the opponent initiated ninjutsu right off the bat, The four enemies, having been prepared, swiftly evaded in all directions. Gotcha. Uchiha Dari smiled slightly. He raised his hand, hurling four kunai. The distance between them was less than 50 meters, a range that was trivial for Uchiha Dari, who was skilled in precise kunai and shuriken throwing. Sure enough, the three weakest of the four mist ninjas were struck down on the spot. Uchiha Dari did not pursue them further, as he already knew from the locations of the kunai strikes that the enemies would not survive. The remaining mist jonin, however, proved to be a bit troublesome. He flickered and vanished from sight. In the next instant, a cold voice echoed from above Uchiha Dari. Do you think you know who you're up against? With a swift motion, the enemy's short blade swung down towards Uchiha Darius' head, its speed astonishing and its force unyielding. If the strike were to land, it would surely split Uchiha Dali's head in two. However, the speed of the jonin was remarkably swift. Uchiha Dali felt a chill run down his spine, breaking into a cold sweat. The battle that had just unfolded had transpired in mere moments. It was only at this point that Uchiha Tetsuhan, Uchiha Inahono, and Uchiha Hakadai had just arrived. They could only watch in horror as Uchiha Dali was attacked by the enemy. Realizing that there was no time to assist him, Uchiha Dali understood that he had been careless. The earlier success in defeating the leading jonin was due to the intimidation caused by the presence of 3 jonin among his 4-man team, which led to the enemy's retreat out of fear. Coupled with the fact that he had taken the initiative and wounded the opponent with a kunai, the enemy's morale had been shattered, allowing him to easily take them down. But the situation now was markedly different. The opponent possessed a strong fighting spirit and formidable strength. Was he destined to meet his end here? In this dire moment, Uchiha Dali's mind flashed to Uchiha Shursue's body flicker technique. If only he could master that technique, perhaps he could evade disaster. He strained to recall it. Although he did not know the body flicker technique, he was intimately familiar with the usage of the hiding technique. While the hiding technique could not match the speed and distance of the body flicker technique, it was still a valuable skill for tracking and traveling. Just as the method of using the hiding technique surfaced in his mind, a system prompt echoed in his head. Ding! You have diligently contemplated the evolution of the hiding technique and comprehended the advanced body flicker technique. The advanced body flicker technique allows for instantaneous, 1/1000th of a second, reactions and rapid movement, achieving an effect faster than lightning. As the system prompt resonated in his mind, a surge of information naturally flowed into his consciousness. Without a moment's hesitation, Uchiha Dali instinctively utilized this newly comprehended advanced body flicker technique. In a flash, he vanished from his original position. At that very instant, the enemy's short blade struck precisely where he had just stood. This strike, which should have cleaved him in two, instead slashed through empty air. The mist-hidden jonin was momentarily stunned. It took him a second to regain his senses. He looked up to see Uchiha Dali now standing 70 or 80 meters away. A glance at Uchiha Tetsuhan and Uchiha Inahono, who were rushing to provide support, made his expression grow grave. The Uchiha clan of Konoha truly lived up to its reputation. Although he was not Shursuke, the fact that he had mastered such an exquisite body flicker technique was indeed impressive. The opponent's gaze returned to Uchiha Dali, who was met with praise. Are you planning to surrender and become a captive? Or will you plead for mercy? Uchiha Dali asked with a smile. At this moment, he had the opportunity to observe his adversary's attire and appearance. This opponent appeared to be around 27 or 28 years old, tall and nearly 2 meters in height. He had shoulder-length grayish-white hair, and although he was a man, he had a somewhat delicate appearance. Furthermore, it seemed that his eyes bore a resemblance to the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. Upon hearing Uchiha Dali's words, the opponent paused slightly, scoffed, and countered with a question. What is your name? Uchiha Dali. Enough with the nonsense. Prepare to die, Uchiha Dali declared, leaping toward the opponent. He unleashed the advanced body flicker technique he had just comprehended and launched a torrential assault upon his foe. Such speed should have left the opponent with no time to react. However, as Uchiha Dali's kunai sliced through the opponent's body, he felt something strange in the feedback. He turned around and suddenly realized. The opponent's body had transformed into a stream of water, coalescing into a humanoid shape. A water clone? He was able to elude my sight and accomplish all of this. Uchiha Dali felt astonished and looked up into the distance. At that moment, the opponent was already standing at the water's edge. I remember you, Uchiha Dali. The next time we meet will be your end, he said with a smile, waving his hand before turning and transforming into a shark, diving into the sea and swiftly disappearing. A shark, you say? Uchiha Dali felt a stirring in his heart. In Naruto, the most famous character capable of transforming into a shark was Kisame Hashigaki from the Mist-Hidden Village. Yet, It was evident that the man he had just encountered was not him. Could he be a relative of Kisame Hashigaki? While he pondered this, Uchiha Tetsuhan and Uchiha Inahono caught up with him. They approached Uchiha Dali from behind, gazing at the vast ocean with regret. That guy was quite powerful. He certainly didn't seem like an ordinary jonin, Uchiha Tetsuhan remarked. He intended to use this as an excuse for the failure of their four-man team to apprehend the enemy. Just as he finished speaking, Uchiha Dali had already formed hand seals and aimed at the ships docked by the shore, unleashing a massive fireball with a diameter of 10 meters. The colossal fireball erupted, instantly obliterating the 6 ships anchored at the shore. With a thunderous roar, the vessels were consumed by the flames, cracking and splintering. Witnessing Uchiha Dali's effortless display of fire release, which rivaled that of a jonin, the 3 Uchiha warriors around him were once again taken aback. This time, Uchiha Tetsuhan could no longer contain his curiosity. You haven't participated in the jonin exam yet, have you? The implication of his words was that Uchiha Dali already possessed the strength of a jonin. Does the title of jonin or chunin have any impact on my ability to carry out missions? Uchiha Dali shrugged nonchalantly and turned to ask in return. At his words, Uchiha Tetsuhan opened his mouth to speak but ultimately shook his head, saying nothing, only leaving behind a remark. Currently, it doesn't have any impact. Let's go. Our mission is complete. We need to intercept the enemy's supply routes and destroy their combat resources. With that, he led the way in another direction. Uchiha Inahono gently patted Uchiha Dali's shoulder, saying, "You performed admirably in the earlier battle. By the way, when did you master the body flicker technique?" Uchiha Dali merely smiled at him and offered no explanation. The other man did not press further and turned to follow Uchiha Tetsuhan. "Keep it up." Uchiha Hakadai also glanced at Uchiha Dali and encouraged him before following suit. Approximately half an hour later, Uchiha Dali and the others arrived at another combat location. This was where the ninja forces of the Mist Hidden Village transported combat supplies to the front lines. Food was not a significant issue. However, not every ninja could master the summoning technique. The consumption of ninja tools on the battlefield was also incomparable to that of ordinary missions. Therefore, these supplies had to be transported manually to replenish the ninja who lacked the ability to summon tools on their person. Uchiha Dali and his team's mission was to sabotage these supplies, leaving the enemy without the necessary combat resources. They lay in wait in the underbrush beneath a large tree, quietly biding their time. According to intelligence, a logistics unit from the Mist Hidden Village would pass through this area at noon today. You two go set up some traps. Dali, scout ahead and see how far the enemy has gotten. Uchiha Tetsuhan, acting as the team leader, was issuing commands to the other members. However, after giving the order, the other two responded, yet he did not hear a reply from Uchiha Dali. Curious, he turned around only to find that Uchiha Dali had long since vanished. Where did that kid go? Uchiha Teiho furrowed his brow and hurriedly inquired. Just a moment ago they were clearly here. How could they have vanished in the blink of an eye? Uchiha Hakadai scratched his head in confusion. That kid wouldn't he have acted on his own, would he? Uchiha Inaho said with concern. No sooner had he spoken than they heard a series of violent explosions erupting from the woods ahead. The expressions of the 3 instantly changed as they exchanged glances. Could it be that Uchiha Dairiki was truly engaged in combat with the enemy? Uchiha Inaho pondered, uncertainty creeping in. That kid really knows how to make one worry. We must hurry and check it out. Uchiha Teiho leaped out from their hiding place, racing towards the source of the sound. The other two immediately followed suit. Before long, they arrived at the site of the explosions, only to witness a scene that was both amusing and tragic. A thick blaze accompanied by the acrid smell of gunpowder spread through the woods. Scattered about the ground, which was pockmarked with craters of varying sizes, lay numerous ninjas from the hidden mist village. Those who survived were all casting bewildered glances at the man standing before them. Remember this well, intercepting you here today is your grandfather, Uchiha Dairiki. Uchiha Dairiki proclaimed proudly, arms crossed. Uchiha Teiho, Uchiha Inaho, Uchiha Hakadai. What are you doing? Do you think this is a game? Uchiha Teiho snapped back to his senses, raising his hand to throw a barrage of shuriken, swiftly eliminating the injured enemies from the hidden mist village. Only then did he turn to face Uchiha Dairiki. Oh, you all made it? I've already taken care of all of them, Uchiha Dairiki said casually, as if he hadn't heard the earlier remarks, exchanging a relaxed glance with the others. Upon hearing this, the 3 looked again at the heaps of enemy corpses on the ground. There was no refuting Uchiha Dairiki's words. Uchiha Hakadai jumped forward to carefully inspect the identities of the fallen enemies and the sealing scrolls they carried. After confirming that the scrolls contained indeed the supplies for the battlefield, he looked up at Uchiha Teiho. It seems these fellows are indeed our targets for ambush. With this realization, Uchiha Taeho felt a wave of relief wash over him. No matter how one looked at it, the mission had finally been accomplished. He turned to Uchiha Dairiki. Next time, don't act on your own. You could easily endanger your teammates. We are executing a secret mission after all. I killed them all. No one knows the details of our mission, and no one knows it was us. I senti that also a secret mission? Uchiha Dairiki countered. This remark left Uchiha Taeho and the other two momentarily speechless. Uchiha Inaho pondered for a moment, finding some merit in Dairiki's argument, and nodded. That seems to be true. He exchanged glances with Uchiha Taeho, who shot him an exasperated glare. Let us go, Uchiha Taeho called out as he turned away. Where to now? Uchiha Dairiki immediately retorted. Since the supply line here has been severed, we shall proceed to our next mission. We will coordinate with other combat squads to launch an assault on the reinforcements from the Hidden Mist Village and prevent them from supporting the front lines. Uchiha Taeho replied. Oh, is that so? Then let us head over there. There are more enemies in that direction. Uchiha Dairiki pointed to his left rear. His keen hearing and sense of smell had detected that there were quite a number of enemies in an area over 2 kilometers away, rapidly advancing toward the heart of the Land of Fire. Over there, Uchiha Inaho looked dubiously at the direction Uchiha Dairiki indicated. That is where our main defensive forces are located. Do the enemies have the audacity to launch an attack there? Uchiha Inaho's words were quickly supported by Uchiha Taeho and Uchiha Hakadai. They too believed the enemies were unlikely to pass through that area unless they were courting death. After all, the main force of the Uchiha clan was assembling in that direction. How many elite shinobi are in the main force? Uchiha Dairiki suddenly posed a question. This inquiry left the three of them momentarily dumbfounded. For a moment, they exchanged looks, unable to provide an answer. What are you trying to say, Dairiki? Uchiha Taeho asked, furrowing his brow in confusion. Deep down, he already had an answer. Sure enough, Uchiha Dairiki chuckled lightly. You all actually know the answer. On the battlefield, regardless of whether they are enemy or ally, when mid-level and low-level shinobi encounter an elite shinobi, they are utterly overpowered and left without the ability to retaliate. To put it plainly, they are mere cannon fodder. Even if they are Uchiha, it is the same. What are you talking about? Cannon fodder? Uchiha Inaho clearly did not appreciate such talk. He quickly admonished Uchiha Dairiki. However, the latter paid him no mind and continued unabated. Cannon fodder facing an enemy elite shinobi have only one fate, death. Thus, your so-called main force, in the eyes of the elite warriors from the Hidden Mist Village, are simply lambs led to slaughter. Do you still think the enemy wouldn't dare to attack that area? What if it were the likes of the 7 ninja swordsmen? Uchiha Dairiki's probing question again left the three of them at a loss for words. The 7 ninja swordsmen could indeed wreak havoc against ordinary Uchiha clan members. They knew very well that many of their clans still had not awakened their Sharingan. Even those who had, the power of a single Tomo was quite limited, insufficient to match the combat experience and strength of seasoned elite shinobi. Just as the three were rendered speechless by Uchiha Dairiki's inquiries, uncertain how to respond, Uchiha Dairiki had already taken the lead, making his way toward that direction. He had said so much merely to avoid over-explaining himself. His heightened perceptive abilities were better kept to himself for now. Before long, the four of them approached the vicinity of the battlefield. At that moment, even without utilizing their formidable perceptive skills, they could clearly hear the sounds of intense combat emanating from the distant woods. The rumbling noises echoed continuously, not limited to the sounds of explosive tags or ninjutsu detonations, but also included the sounds of heavy objects crushing the earth. A thick scent of blood rapidly permeated the woods. The lush, dense forest served as a natural barrier, trapping the stench of blood from dissipating. Noticing these anomalies, the expressions of Uchiha Taeho and the others turned grim. This was not only due to Uchiha Dairiki's accurate assessment, but also because, at that very moment, it was their Uchiha clan members who were under attack. Faced with the heavy casualties of their kin, how could the three of them remain calm? In an instant, even Uchiha Taeho, the team leader, unsheathed the short blade from his back and charged toward the battlefield with increased urgency. The four of them swiftly maneuvered past several large trees, soon witnessing a scene that resembled a hellish nightmare. Hundreds of ninjas from both sides were engaged in a brutal melee. The ground was littered with countless bodies. Some were merely injured, while others lay lifeless. As the battle raged on, more and more continued to fall. The forces from the Hidden Mist Village were clearly overpowering those of the Uchiha clan. It was evident that the Uchiha clan members were beginning to retreat, their casualties mounting alarmingly. Strangely, the signature strong figures of the Uchiha clan, such as Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Shursui, were conspicuously absent from the fray. After Uchiha Tetsuhan, Uchiha Inahono, and Uchiha Hakadai, the three jonin arrived, they immediately plunged into battle. Uchiha Dari, however, did not join the fray right away. He observed the battlefield, hearing the sounds around him. "Ju Meizi! Ju Meizi!" A man cried out, holding the cold corpse of a woman drenched in blood, who had already passed away. Both individuals bore the Uchiha clan's emblem, indicating their lineage. After a moment of anguished cries, the man's eyes suddenly turned a fiery red. In rapid succession, chakra surged violently within him. Ah! He covered his eyes, howling in pain and fury. Moments later, when he opened his eyes again, what had once been dark orbs transformed into a crimson hue. The pitch-black pupils had morphed into the shape of a single Tomo Sharingan. Had he awakened due to overwhelming grief? Witnessing this scene, Uchiha Dari felt a stirring within. It was at this moment that the system's notification echoed in his mind. Ding! You have witnessed the death of an Uchiha clan member, and the clan member before you has awakened the Sharingan, comprehending the three Tomo Sharingan. The three Tomo Sharingan possesses formidable abilities such as observation, replication, and hypnosis. The wielder can directly observe the flow of chakra in the target, apply genjutsu, see through illusions, replicate body techniques and non-bloodline limit ninjutsu, and can evolve into a more advanced form under certain conditions, awakening even greater abilities. Unexpectedly, just by witnessing it, I have also gained a share in the awakening, and it's directly to the three Tomo. Uchiha Dari looked again at the man, who, driven to despair by the sacrifice of his beloved, had awakened the single Tomo Sharingan. Feeling a mix of amusement and sorrow. Just then, Uchiha Tetsuhan's voice called out, "What are you standing around for? Fight!" Upon hearing the call, Uchiha Dari turned to see the battle had turned exceedingly dire. Despite the timely arrival of Uchiha Tetsuhan and the other two jonin, they were still outmatched by the enemies from the hidden mist village. The opposing side not only outnumbered them but also included several jonin, causing their side to be pushed back relentlessly. Let me see what the power of these eyes can do, Uchiha Dari thought, as he activated the high-level body flicker technique. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before an enemy. The enemy, who was swinging a blade at a Uchiha clansman, froze momentarily upon seeing the smiling young man suddenly appear before him. The long blade, raised in mid-swing, hesitated briefly. In that instant, the enemy caught sight of the young man's crimson three Tomo Sharingan. Suddenly, the hidden mist jonin seemed entranced, turning around to strike at his own companion. With a sickening thud, the blade pierced through. The other hidden mist ninja, who had intended to assist his comrade upon seeing Uchiha Dari, was caught off guard as he landed, only to be struck down by his own ally. A look of disbelief filled his eyes as he fell slowly to the ground. Lifeless, Uchiha Dari was taken aback by the actual effects of using the three Tomo Sharingan for the first time. Is this the power of the three Tomo? I didn't expect such surprisingly effective results. Chakra continued to surge within him, allowing him to directly control his three Tomo Sharingan, enabling him to cast illusions or hypnotize his opponents. At this moment, the hidden mist jonin under Uchiha Dari's control, after having killed several of his own comrades, finally broke free from the hypnotic state. Seeing his hands stained with the blood of his companions, the hidden mist jonin's expression shifted to one of anger and shock. He turned abruptly to face Uchiha Dari. Before he could utter a word of inquiry, a sharp kunai pierced his heart. Fall. Uchiha Dari eliminated the hidden mist jonin who had escaped his grasp and immediately focused on the next target. He only targeted jonin. In a flash, he left two kunai embedded in the ground. The enemy's attack missed, while Uchiha Dari appeared behind another foe. This is bad. The hidden mist jonin sensed something amiss and attempted to counterattack, only to feel a chill at his neck. In terror, he instinctively glanced at Uchiha Dari's hand. The latter was grinning, holding a kunai stained with blood, which he then plunged fiercely into the enemy. Ah! The hidden mist jonin screamed in agony, his face filled with abject terror, a primal fear of death. However, he was unaware that he was merely ensnared by the genjutsu of the Uchiha man before him. In reality, his body was frozen in place, immobile, drenched in cold sweat. Everything he had seen and felt was merely an illusion wrought by the genjutsu. Yet, Uchiha Dari's purpose in using genjutsu to control his opponent was not solely to instill the terror of being killed. I do this to minimize the casualties among my clan members. You should understand, right? You won't blame me, will you? As he spoke, Uchiha Dari drove the kunai deep into the opponent's heart. This time it was a genuine kill, not an illusion. After dispatching another hidden mist jonin, Uchiha Dari began to target others. Using his newly awakened 3-tomo Sharingan, his keen perception, and a body flicker technique surpassing that of Uchiha Shursui, he became a whirlwind of movement, a single kunai weaving through a battlefield exceeding 10,000 square meters. In mere moments, over 20 hidden mist ninjas had met their end at his hands. The pressure on the Uchiha clan members diminished significantly, allowing them to organize a counterattack. The enemy finally sensed something was amiss, their panic and fear spreading, and their morale plummeted, dissuading them from continuing the fight. What's up with that kid? Body flicker Shursui? No, he isn't Uchiha Shursui, another Uchiha ninja skilled in body flicker technique. I just heard him say his name is Uchiha Dari. This guy is too strong. Mission aborted. We need to retreat quickly, or we'll all die here. In a flurry of confusion, the remaining hidden mist ninjas began to scatter in all directions. The Uchiha clan members, who had suffered significant losses and morale blows, were not about to let such an opportunity slip away. Seeing the enemies flee, they immediately pursued, avenging their fallen. Uchiha Tetsuhan and Uchiha Inahono were no exceptions. Meanwhile, Uchiha Hakadai, noticing Uchiha Dari refraining from pursuing the enemies, curiously halted and inquired, "Why aren't you going after them? Most of the stronger ones have already been eliminated by me. The rest aren't worth my effort." Uchiha Hakadai gazed at Uchiha Dari in silence, a deep look exchanged, before hastily joining the chase. Once the majority of the Uchiha clan members had pursued the fleeing enemies, Uchiha Dari nonchalantly surveyed his surroundings. His calm eyes returned to their normal state from the 3-tomo. Yet, deep within his gaze, there flickered a hint of compassion. This was a sentiment that any normal person would feel upon witnessing the hellish devastation of the battlefield before them. War is indeed brutal. Uchiha Dari silently pondered. The sacrificed Uchiha clan members will probably never know that they were merely used. He had long noticed the remnants of the clash between water release and fire release at the scene. The charred trees and scorched earth were sparse and limited in range, indicating that water release held the upper hand. The lingering thick mist in the forest further corroborated this, for otherwise, the fog would have long dissipated under the evaporation caused by fire release. The ninjas from the hidden mist village excelled in the art of hidden mist technique. Moving within the fog was highly advantageous for them, but it posed the opposite effect for their enemies. This was also a significant reason behind the devastating defeat suffered by the Uchiha clan during the recent brutal battle, leading to the loss of so many of their members. "Thank you." Just as Uchiha Dali was lost in thought, a sudden voice rang out from behind him. He turned around to see an 11 or 12-year-old boy looking up at him. The boy's head was wrapped in bandages, and his cheek bore a shocking scar from a knife wound. "Thank you for saving us all," the little boy said, meeting Uchiha Dali's gaze. "What is your name?" Uchiha Dali inquired. "Uchiha 12, the boy replied. 12. Uchiha Dali repeated softly, realizing that the boy was the 12th child in a family that had at least 12 children. However, as he looked around, he saw no sign of the boy's family. An 11 or 12-year-old child had survived the battlefield all alone. Uchiha Dali felt a slight tightening in his heart, and his expression grew significantly more serious. "Does it hurt?" he asked, regarding the boy with a gentler tone. The boy shook his head. "I can't feel my face anymore. The same goes for my hand." He glanced at his right hand. Uchiha Dali then noticed that the boy's right hand hung limply, seemingly unable to move. He reached out to examine it, revealing a look of helplessness mixed with pity. "The nerve damage from the knife wound has not only affected your facial sensation but has also impacted the nerves in your arm." "Oh, will it get better?" the boy asked innocently. "Once my injuries heal?" The question made Uchiha Dali's heart ache once more. He was at a loss for how to explain further to the boy. Nerve damage was irreversible for an ordinary person. Even Tsunade might not be able to help. In that moment, Uchiha Dali silently vowed to put an end to this brutal war and rewrite the fate of the Uchiha clan entirely. With his resolve firm, Uchiha Dali's gaze turned cold. Just moments ago, he had remarked that the fleeing enemies were too weak to warrant his intervention. Yet now he swiftly executed a high-level body flicker technique and vanished from sight. Cutting the grass without uprooting it allows it to grow back with the spring breeze. The highest form of peace was achieved through war. Only by truly inflicting pain on the hidden mist village, by eliminating as many of the active forces from the other ninja villages as possible, could the rulers behind these ninja villages feel the sting. Thus, those daimyos and the kages of the various ninja villages would be willing to sit down and negotiate sincerely. Soon, Uchiha Dali caught up with the fleeing enemies and easily dealt with a portion of them. Meanwhile, the other Uchihas were still engaged in a game of cat and mouse with the enemies. Upon witnessing Uchiha Dali's prowess in effortlessly dispatching the fleeing foes, the Uchiha clan members couldn't help but regard this suddenly emerging powerful clansman with newfound respect. Uchiha Dali, I remember that kid is a descendant of Uchiha Tanshan, right? The one reputed to possess the strongest three-tomo Sharingan? The so-called strongest is merely a jest. Among the Uchiha Genin with three tomo, he was the only one. I never expected his descendant to be so formidable, especially his body flicker technique. It has surely reached Shirsue's level. The clear voices of discussion resonated among the clan members. Uchiha Dali chose not to respond to any of it. His ancestor, Uchiha Tanshan, bore the title of the strongest three-tomo, yet in truth this title was merely ironic. Initially, it seemed that Uchiha Tanshan himself had proclaimed that he had awakened the three-tomo Sharingan, which eventually led to him acquiring such a title. Despite being a generation apart, Uchiha Dali recalled that Uchiha Tanshan had only awakened a single tomo Sharingan and had remained a genin throughout, never advancing to a higher rank. Out of pride, he had chosen to deceive others, boasting about his abilities. This was considered a mark of shame among the proud Uchiha clan, and thus, behind closed doors, the clan members had given their ancestor such a sarcastic nickname. A descendant of a lowly clansman would likely also be seen as lowly, a consensus long established among the entire Uchiha clan. It was understandable that the clan members around him would react in this manner and engage in such discussions. However, you will come to regard me with even greater respect in the future. From this day forth, the strongest three-tomo no longer exists. I am who I am, Uchiha Dali, he silently vowed. Shaking off these trivial memories, Uchiha Dali leaped and landed beside Uchiha Tiehua. The latter had just dealt with two of the hidden mist village Chunin who had abandoned their escape and chose to resist. Turns out your strength is that formidable. Uchiha Tiehua turned back, giving Uchiha Dali a deep look, his tone laden with meaning. Indeed, no wonder you were able to repel the 7 ninja swordsmen. Now I believe it. Uchiha Inao also jumped over and added. The look of doubt and disdain that he initially held towards Uchiha Dali had vanished, replaced by a glimmer of respect in his eyes. Even within the Uchiha clan, the survival of the fittest remained a prevailing principle. Uchiha Dali chose not to overly respond to their praises, maintaining an air of natural composure, as if this were simply his due. Since I have already begun this slaughter, I might as well continue. There are still enemies in that direction. Uchiha Dali pointed toward the woods ahead. His extraordinary perception had already accurately locked onto a small group of enemy forces moving several kilometers away in the forest. As soon as he spoke, he immediately took the lead toward that direction. Upon hearing Uchiha Dali's words and witnessing his actions, Uchiha Tiehua and Uchiha Inao exchanged astonished glances. He can sense the presence of the enemies? Uchiha Tiehua muttered incredulously to himself. Uchiha Inao slightly closed his eyes to carefully sense, then shook his head. I have no such perception. As he spoke, doubts swirled in his heart. Both of them were genuine Uchiha clan Jounin and possessed three-tomo Sharingan. If they couldn't even sense the presence of the enemies, it usually meant one of a few possibilities. Either Uchiha Dali had misjudged, or their sensory abilities were far inferior to Uchiha Dali's. Let us follow him and see. Uchiha Tiehua, equally uncertain, took the lead. Uchiha Inao quickly called for the other Uchiha clan members and pursued after him. It soon proved that Uchiha Dali's judgment was correct. They discovered another group of ninjas from the hidden mist village about 3.5 kilometers from the previous battlefield. Naturally, it was Uchiha Dali who encountered the enemy first. Without further ado, both sides launched into a fierce battle. On the path just taken while pursuing, Uchiha Dali had already overheard their conversation. This group of Mist Village ninjas consisted of mere rookies, as the changing dynamics of the battlefield had forced their leading jonin to provide support to other areas, undertaking more critical tasks. Thus, they were left behind here. This situation was quite similar to that of Minato Namikaze, who was compelled to leave Kakashi, Obito Uchiha, and Rin Noara behind to support the battlefield. Faced with this group of Mist Village Chunin and even genin who had lost contact with their leading jonin, the outcome of the battle was naturally predictable. By the time the other Uchiha clan members arrived, they were met with a vast area that had clearly been scorched by flames. Charred trees were still smoldering. Within the over 1,500 square meters of burned land, lay more than 20 Mist Village ninjas, seemingly all thoroughly cooked. Witnessing this scene, the Uchiha clan members who had just arrived at the battlefield were all deeply moved. Did he single-handedly eliminate all the enemies? Just like before, he was incredibly strong. It seems that our Uchiha clan has given birth to another genius. The brutal battlefield truly hones individuals. I saw him use the Sharingan earlier. When did he awaken it? The murmurs of the clan members around naturally reached the ears of Uchiha Tiehua and others. He awakened the Sharingan? Uchiha Tiehua looked at Uchiha Dali's back in surprise. With his outstanding counter-ambush performance, Uchiha Dali gradually established a commendable status in the hearts of the majority of the Uchiha clan members. Labels such as genius, powerful strength, and calm decisiveness were naturally affixed to Uchiha Dali. No one now referred to him as merely the descendant of the strongest three Tomo. When his name was mentioned, clan members would say he was a man who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Shunshin Shursui. Regarding the subtle change in the impression these clan members had of him, Uchiha Dali chose not to intervene but to let it unfold naturally. He understood well the principle of taking one's rightful place. Moreover, earning the respect of his clan was a promising start to his plan to rewrite the Uchiha's destiny. After that, Uchiha Dali led these clan members, who were originally meant to be cannon fodder in the Third Shinobi World War, to successfully ambush and annihilate several active forces from the Mist Village on the battlefield. From the Fourth Shinobi World War, the total number of ninja in the Allied shinobi forces, combined with the samurai of the Land of Iron, amounted to a mere 80,000. Even for the great nations of the ninja world, be it Konoha, Kimogakure, Kirigakure, Sunagakure, or Iwagakure, the overall combat power they could directly commit to the battlefield was quite limited. In such circumstances, a single ninja village having over 10,000 participants in battle was already quite remarkable. Under these conditions, the Mist Village suffered consecutive losses of several ambush units, totaling several hundred personnel. This was enough to cause them considerable pain. News from the battlefield naturally reached the ears of the high-ranking officials in the Mist Village. The name of the man who instilled fear in countless Mist Village ninjas, known as the one who surpassed Shunshin Shursui, began to spread throughout the battlefield. At this very moment, on the edge of the battlefield near the eastern border of the Land of Fire, in a concealed corner, Uchiha Shursui was observing the situation outside from his hiding spot. His task today was to ambush an elite unit from the Mist Village. According to intelligence, the opponent was quite formidable. Previously, several Konoha combat teams had already fallen victim to their deadly hands, and the enemy had also sabotaged Konoha's supply lines. Hence, the higher-ups had dispatched this Uchiha genius ninja to deal with those enemies, hoping to turn the tide. Before long, Uchiha Shursui sensed movement in the woods. He remained undetected, continuing his covert observation. Soon, he saw 8 ninjas rapidly approaching from directly ahead. Despite the distance still being over 200 meters, for Uchiha Shursui, who possessed remarkable insight through his Sharingan, discerning the number and appearance of the opponents was not a challenge. He noted that the man leading the group, though appearing to be in his 20s, had a countenance filled with authority, unmistakably not a benign character. Those mist ninjas following him were all at least Jonin level. However, Uchiha Shursui's attention was drawn to more than just that. He also observed that the leading man wore a black eye patch over his right eye, seemingly having lost his left eye. Yet, at that moment, Uchiha Shursui's expression grew serious. Through his Sharingan, he detected unusual chakra flow patterns within the enemy. What was the deal with that eye? While Uchiha Shursui felt astonished, the enemy had already stopped about 50 or 60 meters away from him. The leading Mist Jonin directly signaled the others to halt and fixed his piercing gaze on Uchiha Shursui's hiding spot. Clearly, he had detected the ambush prepared by Uchiha Shursui. "What is it, Captain Ao?" puzzled team member inquired. "The right eye I lost on the battlefield has been fortuitously replaced. This new eye of mine is unlike any ordinary eye," the man referred to as Ao responded, and as he spoke, he drew a kunai and hurled it towards Uchiha Shursui's location. The sharp kunai sliced through the air, accurately striking the spot where Uchiha Shursui was concealed. However, the kunai vanished without a trace. At that moment, Ao looked up towards the top of a nearby tall tree. His expression suddenly shifted. The other team members followed his gaze upward, and to their astonishment, they saw a young man who had seemingly materialized from thin air. He appeared to be no older than his teens, just a boy. Yet, the resolute look in his eyes, coupled with the brilliant and chilling crimson hue within them, conveyed to every mist ninja present that this young man was not to be trifled with. Shunshin Shursui. Ao's expression turned grave as he slowly uttered those 4 words. Meanwhile, Uchiha Shursui observed the few enemies below with a curious yet indifferent gaze, showing no sign of fear despite their numbers being several times greater than his own. Is he really Shunshin Shursui? There is absolutely no doubt. The battlefield is rife with rumors about him, and we have gathered a wealth of intelligence on him, Ao said. It seems our mission must be aborted. He spoke in a low tone. He was self-aware enough to understand that with the strength of himself and his small team, even with the recently acquired Byakugan from the Hyuga clan aiding them, they could only put up a fight against Uchiha Shursui at a heavy cost. The cost-effectiveness of such a battle was quite low. Thus, Ao made the decision to retreat immediately. Fortunately, Uchiha Shursui showed no intent to intercept them. It was evident he shared the same assessment as Ao. Taking on 8 Jonin by himself, even if he could emerge victorious, would still result in a Pyrrhic victory. The reason was simple. The opponent's right eye was the Byakugan from the Hyuga clan, known for its unparalleled insight. Your Uchiha clan is indeed an outstanding ninja clan, having produced 2 unbelievable geniuses in such a short span. Before you leave, may I ask what your relationship with Uchiha Dali is? Ching warily fixed his gaze on Shursui Uchiha, his Byakugan already activated, revealing the precise flow of chakra within his opponent's body. His inquiry stemmed not only from personal curiosity but, more importantly, from a desire to gather intelligence on the Uchiha clan. After all, he had personally led his team to the battlefield, with one of his missions being to glean information about that man, an individual who had surpassed the Shunshin technique of Shursui, Uchiha Daidoku. Shursui Uchiha seemed unaware of the rumors surrounding Uchiha Daidoku, and at that moment, he appeared somewhat perplexed by Ching's question. He had only heard the name of that clan member, a vague recollection of someone who was said to be a descendant of the strongest 3-tomo Uchiha, a legendary figure. However, even so, it was unlikely that Shursui would divulge information about his clan member to an adversary in a life-or-death confrontation. He could not help but think of the ironic joke that circulated within the Uchiha clan, hinting at his reluctance to respond. Ching was indeed anxious. After waiting for a moment without receiving a reply from Shursui, he began to reconsider his approach and prepared to retreat with his team. Just before departing, however, he couldn't help but add, "It is said that that man's Shunshin technique has surpassed yours, Shursui Uchiha. As a worthy opponent, I truly hope to hear your response to confirm this rumor." Ching's probing still elicited no response from Shursui Uchiha. Despite his youth, Ching's cognitive abilities were far more sophisticated than they appeared on the surface. Such a simplistic tactic would not fool Shursui. Nonetheless, Ching's words had left a lingering question in Shursui's mind. Realizing he could not extract any valuable intelligence from this troublesome man, Ching fully decided to retreat, maintaining his vigilance and keeping his Byakugan trained on Shursui in case of a sudden attack. He signaled his subordinates to leave. "Let us go." Before long, Ching and his team vanished from sight. Once they departed, Shursui Uchiha let out a sigh of relief. He began to recall everything he knew about the name Uchiha Daitoku, surpassing my existence. If another genius truly emerged, that would indeed be a good thing. Although he had not been able to find any valuable clues in his memories, Shursui still felt a sense of comfort. To have made such an impression on a rival jonin that they remembered his name and held him in such high regard was no small feat if given the chance. He would like to meet that man. With that thought, Shursui Uchiha swiftly turned and vanished from the tree. Since Uchiha Daidoku had increasingly mastered his own powers, he had become remarkably adept on the battlefield. His 3-tomo Sharingan had reached a perfect synergy with his abilities. Coupled with advanced Shunshin techniques and exceptional sensory skills, he found himself nearly invincible against the enemies of the Mist Village. Even opposing jonin would find it futile to challenge him without a decisive numerical advantage. Thus, the title of the man who surpassed Shunshin Shursui became deeply intertwined with the name Uchiha Daidoku. Across the battlefield, almost everyone on both sides had heard of that name. It seemed that Uchiha Daidoku had inflicted significant losses on the Mist Village. Consequently, by the 3rd day of battle, the number of active Mist ninjas on the battlefield had drastically dwindled. These foes appeared to have vanished overnight, retreating from the Land of Fire without a trace. Recent intelligence from the village indicated that the daimyo of the Water Country, in conjunction with the 3rd Mizukage, had agreed to negotiate. Yet, it was precisely during such times that one must remain vigilant to prevent the Mist Village from employing deceitful tactics to return. Uchiha Tetsuhan approached Uchiha Daitoku from behind and offered a reminder. At that moment, the dynamics between the two had subtly shifted. Over the past 3 days, both Uchiha Tetsuhan and Uchiha Inaho, along with Uchiha Hakadai, had gradually come to realize the considerable disparity in strength between themselves and Uchiha Daitoku. However, the differences extended beyond mere power. In terms of tactical application, combat coordination, personal charisma, and leadership abilities, they were all significantly inferior to Uchiha Daidoku. Thus, though it was tacitly understood that Uchiha Tetsuhan remained the captain of their squad, in a more profound sense, the leadership position in everyone's hearts had quietly shifted from Uchiha Tetsuhan to Uchiha Daidoku. This included Uchiha Tetsuhan himself, who acknowledged this internally. It was for this reason that he now presented himself in a manner akin to a subordinate reporting to a superior. Everything unfolded as anticipated. Uchiha Daidoku responded nonchalantly, though a hint of pretense lingered in his tone, which did not irk Uchiha Tetsuhan or the others. Time and again, practical experience had proven that he truly possessed the ability and the credentials to carry himself with such confidence. Are there any further instructions? Uchiha Daidoku suddenly inquired. Leave a few combat teams here for defense, while the remaining forces will transfer to support the southern border battlefield against the forces of the Land of Lightning's Cloud Village. Uchiha Tetsuhan replied. Understood. You all should head to meet Captain Fugaku. Uchiha Daidoku nodded. And you? There are a few pests still lurking on the battlefield. I will eliminate them. Upon hearing this, Uchiha Tetsuhan nodded without hesitation. He trusted Uchiha Daidoku's strength. Since Uchiha Daidoku had not mentioned the need for support, it implied that he was fully confident in dealing with those enemies and that Tetsuhan did not need to intervene further. Soon, Uchiha Tetsuhan led dozens of Uchiha clansmen to rendezvous with the forces led by Uchiha Fugaku. Meanwhile, Uchiha Daidoku looked up towards another direction on the battlefield, turned, and vanished without a trace. The Mist Village had truly been hurt. They were now reluctant to send large numbers of troops into the Land of Fire to engage in battle. Instead, they opted to dispatch elite combat teams to operate covertly on the battlefield, launching assaults against Konoha's living forces. Each member of these elite squads possessed Jonin-level strength. However, they specifically targeted relatively weaker teams from Konoha, with one singular objective, to enact disproportionate retaliation against Konoha and the Uchiha clan. Among those responsible for this mission, one of the principal forces was, of course, the infamous 7 ninja swordsmen. In their last encounter with Uchiha Daidoku, they had met with failure, suffering injuries from explosive tags and Uchiha Daidoku's remarkably precise kunai throwing technique. After a brief period of recovery, they re-emerged into action. They avoided the areas of their previous clashes and were now maneuvering in the southeastern border of the Land of Fire, making their way toward the side of Konoha. Prior to this, they had consecutively attacked and annihilated several Konoha defense teams. With Konoha's main forces having lost our troops as targets, they likely gathered at other battlefronts, right? Without their strong to hinder us, we can do as we please here. Ha ha ha. One of the 7, the man known as Tonkatsuya, sneered. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the branches, creating a mesmerizing Tyndall effect. Suddenly, a green figure darted swiftly through the light, followed closely by 2 others. Kui, we've gone too deep. This is too dangerous. The young Nara Shinkai could not help but remind once more. Although they had already received notification that the forces of the Hidden Mist Village were fully withdrawing from the battlefield of the Land of Fire, it was precisely during such times that one must remain vigilant. This knowledge was hard-won through the blood and tears of countless predecessors from the Leaf Village. The enemy is always cunning, and one must be wary of every possibility. The battlefield is a place where men unleash their fervor and youth. Our comrades are bravely fighting against the enemy, and in such moments we too must demonstrate our valor as men. Might Guy, still in his teenage years, was visibly excited, even a bit exhilarated. However, his voice abruptly ceased at that moment. Beside him, the duo of Nara Shikamaru and Ebisu also halted in sync with his motion. The 3 of them raised their heads warily to look ahead. Not far in front of them, perched in the trees, stood 7 men with twisted expressions and bizarre attire. Their identities could be discerned from the forehead protectors they wore. Ninjas from the Hidden Mist Village? Might Guy's eyes narrowed slightly. Even in his impulsiveness, he could easily see that these 7 individuals were not to be underestimated. Each one is a Jonin. I told you we were being too reckless. What do we do now? Ebisu couldn't help but voice his concern. They were merely 3 individuals, none of whom were Jonin, while the opposing side boasted a full 7 members. Not only did they outnumber them 2 to 1, but, more crucially, each of the enemies was a formidable force of Jonin rank or higher. They clearly appeared to be ruthless foes, not to be trifled with. We're done for, Nara Shikamaru muttered under his breath. No sooner had he spoken than one of the 7 adversaries began to taunt them. Heh. 3 little leaf brats. We're quite fortunate, aren't we? The man spoke with a sinister grin, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth that made him look quite menacing. Moreover, a blood-red pattern resembling a demonic mouth adorned his chin, enhancing his fierce and malevolent appearance. Children would likely cry if they heard him speak at night. The one with the green watermelon head is mine. You all have no objections, right? A corpulent man with long orange hair, nearly dragging along the ground, known as Suka Senboku, glared menacingly at Might Guy and addressed his companions. In that case, the remaining 2 are mine. The man who had just spoken, Biwajuzu, immediately sneered. Perhaps they had already dispatched too many leaf genin on their way here, for the rest of the members showed no dissent. Then let us go. Quick battle, quick resolution, and then we'll look for new targets. Suka Senboku brandished his sword, Samahata, and leapt toward Might Guy with astonishing speed, executing a horizontal sweep aimed at his waist. The force behind the attack was tremendous, and the consequences of being hit were dire. Thankfully, Might Guy reacted quickly. At the critical moment, he leapt back just in time to narrowly evade his opponent's strike. With a resounding crash, the sword struck the ground where Might Guy had just stood, shattering the earth and creating a large crater. As the debris settled, Suka Senboku charged again. At that moment, Nara Shikamaru and Ebisu jumped to the left and right, respectively, positioning themselves in front of Might Guy to block Suka Senboku's assault with their kunai. The two of them strained to hold back the force of the attack, barely managing to defend against the onslaught. Might Guy, we can't win against them. We need to retreat. Seeing Might Guy still intent on attacking Suka Senboku with taijutsu, Nara Shikamaru urged him urgently. Retreat? Can you run away? Biwa Juzu, wielding a beheading sword, had silently appeared behind Might Guy. Without a moment's hesitation, he swung the sword toward Might Guy's back. The ferocity of his strike suggested he had no intention of holding back at all. Once you step onto the battlefield and fight with us, you must be prepared for the possibility of death. Don't think we're just bullying children. Biwa Juzu laughed menacingly, as if he were already assured of victory. But at that moment, Might Guy leapt up, narrowly avoiding the lethal blow. Meanwhile, Nara Shikamaru and Ebisu also jumped away to create distance from Suka Senboku. Seeing that these leaf children were proving to be such a challenge that one strike was insufficient to take them down, both Biwa Juzu and Suka Senboku grew somewhat vexed. They began to pursue further. However, the three, clearly outmatched by their adversaries, chose to turn and flee. Run? Can you escape? Suka Senboku charged ahead, pursuing the fleeing Might Guy and his companions, with the rest of the 7 ninja swordsmen following closely behind. Their speed was not particularly swift, for at that moment, they perceived this as a hunt they had already won, a game of cat and mouse to pass the time. Despite not having fully committed to the hunt, the 7 soon caught up to Might Guy and his companions. Instead of attacking from behind, they maneuvered to position themselves in front of the trio, waiting. As Might Guy, Nara Shikamaru, and Ebisu traversed through the woods without noticing their pursuers, they thought they had finally escaped. But just as they began to breathe a sigh of relief, they found themselves confronted by several figures, some standing and others sitting atop a pile of rubble, watching them with bemused expressions. Instantly, the faces of Might Guy and his companions turned pale, their hearts sinking in despair. It seems we can't escape, Ebisu said gravely. In that moment, his gaze grew resolute. Since escape was no longer an option, they would fight to the end. Might Guy and Nara Shikamaru shared the same mindset. The three formed a defensive posture, ready to face their enemies to the bitter end. Oh, you still wish to resist? In that case, allow me to entertain you, said the man known as Kantu Yabaru, as he slowly stepped forward. Just then, a figure suddenly approached from the side, catching up to Might Guy and the others. Simultaneously, another figure appeared silently and ghost-like, unnoticed by the others, observing the battlefield with an amused expression. The individual who arrived from behind and stood before Might Guy and his companions bore a striking resemblance to a younger Might Guy, dressed similarly